study today a very important topic in Hibernate called as states of objects in Hibernate. Now, in Hibernate, an object can go through four stages. Initially, it is in transient state, then it goes into the persistent state, then it goes into the detached state, and then it goes into the removed state. So, object goes via these phases. So, first, it is in the transient state. So this is the state when we just create the object. So if I have made an entity class called as temporary employee over here with just two attributes, C number and name, and I have not given the auto increment to the employee number, so I will give the employee number. So I will make an object over here, temporary employee EMP1, and I will make a new object. Okay, let's say we will use the no args constructor and then set us to inject the data. So as I have not given auto increment, I will set the employee number. Okay, so let me give any employee number 23 and emp1 dot set e name. Okay, let's give 123 and set e name. Let's say I'll give Mike. Now at this time, this object is in the transient state. This is in state 1, that is, it is in the transient state. So by the meaning of transient state means neither is the session cache aware of this object nor is the database aware of this object. So nor is the session cache aware of this object and nor is the MySQL database aware of the existence of this object. So in the let's come and take this states from here, paste it over here. Let's get this also closer. So in transient states, both are not aware of the existence of the object. No to the session cache and no to the MySQL database. Then once I call the save method on this object, once I do session 1 dot save, now and I say this object, this gets saved in the database. So once I call the save method, it goes into the second state, that is the persistent state. Now the object has come in the persistent state. So by invoking the session dot save and the object, whatever object E1. Okay, so when I created the object, initially, at that moment, this object was in transient state. Okay, this object employee 1 was in the transient state. Okay. And now when I click on save and I say save EMP1, now it goes into the persistent state. So when I mean by persistent state means both the session cache and the database is aware of the existence of this object. So there will be a entry in the database also and an entry in the session cache also. So there is a entry by session cache for the object employee number 123 and name Mike. Okay. Now going forward, if I fetch this object, so if I do a session 1 dot get and I say temporary employee class and object ID attribute 123, what do you think? Will it query from the database or will it return it from the, once I save, it goes in the second state, right? It is a state 2, that is, it is in the persistent state. So now when I try to get this object, okay, you can give any name to it, E1. So will it fetch this from the database or will it return it from the session cache? The object is there in the cache, so it will return from the cache itself. So will the query be displayed? Will it display the query on the console? No. Query will not be displayed. Query will not be displayed because whatever we are fetching from the session cache, right? So it will not query the database. And if I try to display this object, okay, so if I say first display, so it will display the first display from the session cache. Okay, so once I do a t save, I should do a tx dot commit because we are doing a DML query. So now let's try to run this code and check. So it will display the insert query, but it will not display the select query because the object has been fetched from the cache itself. See, it is displaying the insert query, but it is not displaying the select query because it did not go to the database. It is directly displaying from the session. Now, if I come and I clear the session, means now this session is flushed. So to flush the session, we have a function called as clear. So this will remove all the objects from the session. Okay. So now we can say that the object has gone into detached state. Now we can say the object has gone into, from the persistent state. If I go and I execute the session dot clear or session dot close, if I do session dot clear or session dot close, means now that object has been removed from the session. So means the session is not aware of the object, but it is still there in the database. Database is still aware of the object. It is still there in the database, but it is not there in the session. How do I prove it is not in the session? So after this, if I try to fetch the same object, now it, as it is not there in the session, it will query the database. It will query the database. So if I say E2 and display over here second display, and I say E2, now it will query the database. Database will be, query will be displayed because it has sent the query to the database. The object was not found in the session cache. Okay, so it will first display me the object E1 like this, first display, then display me the SQL query, and then display me second display. Okay, but now as this object has already been stored in the memory, so let's take a new object 124, or else it will throw a primary key error. 124 and 120. Okay, so when the first time I stored 124 and I fetched the same, I got it from the cache, then I cleared the cache. Now when I say 124, it will not come from the cache. So now 124 will be saved in the session cache when I fetch it. First time will give me from the cache, clear the session. Second time when I fetch, it will give me from the database. So let's run and check. So what happened over here? Duplicate entry. I did not save it. I did not save it. I should have saved that. So it was creating duplicate entries. Let me save it and now let me run it again. Okay. So see over here now. It inserts that record, puts in the cache also. First time when I fetched it, directly got me from the cache. When I cleared the session, Second time when I fetched it, it got me from the database, so the query got displayed, and second time it is displaying me this. So now once I do this, now your object will be in the third state, that is the object will be in the detached state. Means it is there in the database, but it is not there in the session. And in the fourth state, when I remove that object, when I fetch this object, so next time again I'll do, so I'll say 125, fetch 125, display 125, and then what I will do once I have this object, I will say session 1 dot delete the object E2. Now it has gone into the removed state. Removed state means it is there in the session but not in the database. So step 4, it goes into the removed state. So when I call on the persistent state, when I go and call delete, so when I say session dot delete E1, then it goes into the removed state. And by removed state means it is not there in the session, but it is there in the database. Sorry, I spoke the reverse of it. It is there in the session, but not there in the database. It is removed. So once I remove it means it is removed from the database. It does not exist in the database. Okay. So these are the 4 states of a object in Hibernate: transient, persistent, detached, and removed.